Benjamin Franklin once said something like this: "Most people die at 25 but aren't buried until they're 70. We're born, we grow up. And then what?" When the pandemic hit, were you afraid of the virus? Sometimes, in a strange way, even something like a virus can bring clarity. It forces us to see what really matters in life. You saw it in the news in those families where nearly everyone died, and how someone just threw stacks of money into the street, all 100 yen bills. That's nearly 400,000 Vietnamese dong each, just scattered along the roads. Some streets in Wuhan were like that. I read about it, and I couldn't help but laugh, not out of joy, but a kind of bitter amusement. We work so hard to hold on to money, and then when we're close to death, we finally let it go. That person was the one who threw all that money away. At least they knew how to let go. And that, in itself, is a kind of happiness. To be able to release, even at the end. Most of us, we die still clinging. But the guy who scattered his money, he had already let go. And in doing so, he found peace in his final moment. That's more than many can say. We keep going in circles because we hold on but don't know how to let go. And so, the true meaning of life, maybe we only begin to see it after we've been through something huge, something that shakes us to our core. Only then do we finally understand. If someone lives their whole life sheltered like a factory farm chicken, lucky in work, lucky in marriage, lucky with children, then maybe, just maybe, life never reveals its true meaning. Because one of the key ingredients to discovering life's value is pain. It's the hardship, the struggles we've had to overcome that shape us. That's where the truth lies. In Buddhism, the Buddha called it the first noble truth, dukkha, or suffering. It's through suffering that we find our way back to happiness. Without deep suffering, we can't truly return to joy. That's why, among the Four Noble Truths, suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path of suffering comes first. And there's a reason for that. Back when I first read about this, I was surprised. I thought, why would the Buddha put suffering at the forefront? I even thought maybe he wasn't optimistic, maybe he was pessimistic. Shouldn't the most positive thing come first? But the more I studied, the more I realized it's brilliant, because it's true, and because it teaches us the deepest lessons. The other truths, they matter too, but their lessons aren't as profound unless you've really faced the first one. Later we'll come to the part about how we can look deeply into life, into ourselves, into the world around us, because without that ability to look deeply, you'll never truly understand what life means. You'll never find your own worth. So here we are looking at the stages of life: birth, growing up, getting married, having children, growing old, and then dying. The full cycle. And we have to ask, is that meaningful? Is that truly a life of value? The moment we ask that question, we start to feel uneasy, because the answer might just be no. We're born, we grow up, we start a family, we age, and we die. And somehow it all feels bland, a little absurd. 70 years of life, and we call ourselves the most intelligent species on Earth. But if this is all there is, if we just spin in circles until we die, there's something strangely empty about it all. Think about it. Is this process really that different from animals? A dog is born, it grows up, finds a mate, grows old, and dies. Is that any different from your pet at home? Any different from the chicken you raise in the backyard? Not really. And if our entire existence follows the same loop, then isn't that a tragic waste? A colossal waste of potential? That's why Benjamin Franklin's words hit so hard. Most people die at 25 but aren't buried until 70. We're born and grow up until around 25. After that, life starts to lose its spark. It becomes mechanical, just a daily routine. Off to work in the morning, back in the evening. Repeat. Then marriage, then old age, then death, the end. And if that's all there is, what was the point? That's why Franklin said we grow up by 25 but don't get buried until we're 70. And when you hear that, you realize almost all the great minds, the truly exceptional people in this world, see life differently. They don't accept this routine as enough. They look deeper. They see how absurd it is to just follow the same path, and so they search for something more meaningful. But if you're satisfied with this life as it is, if you think this cycle is enough, then you're no different than a factory farm chicken in a cage, nothing more. So let me ask you, do you think the world has been changed by the masses or by a few brilliant individuals? Across thousands of years from when the population was just 1 billion or 2 to the 7 billion we have now, was history shaped by crowds or by a handful of remarkable people? It's always been the few. Just a few people have turned the tide of history. One Hitler shifted the course of a world war. One Buddha, one Jesus, they reshaped the spiritual consciousness of entire civilizations. That's the power of the exceptional individual, and that's why elections can be misleading. Elections reflect the mood of the crowd, but they don't necessarily point us in the right direction. Imagine going to a psychiatric hospital and holding a vote for the most sane person there. The director of the hospital, the one who's truly stable, would probably get voted as the craziest. Why? Because he doesn't think like the rest of them. And that's the danger of crowd thinking. It sees truth as whatever most people agree on, not what's actually true. And all those patients in the psychiatric ward, they'd vote for themselves, believing they're the sane ones. In a neighborhood where everyone drinks, the one person who doesn't, he's the odd one out. He'd be the first to lose any kind of election, no chance of rising up. There's a quote very famous, though I can't remember if it comes from a spiritual text or some great thinker, but it goes like this: 1,000 cows are still just cows, but one human remains a human. It's a reminder that crowd mentality means nothing in the pursuit of truth or meaning. If you really understand that, you'll stop blindly following society. You'll stop letting the world stuff your head full of the same recycled messages. Make money, get married, have kids, then make more money. Leave each child a house, then die. That's happiness. That's what they keep feeding you, over and over again. And then they say, study math and you'll be smart. But does knowing sine, cosine, and tangent really make you intelligent? Not necessarily. Most of us go through our entire lives without ever needing to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Maybe Dr. Ngo Bao Chao does, but the rest of us, not so much. Ngo Bao Chao is a Vietnamese-French mathematician. His work earned him the Fields Medal in 2010. From the moment you stepped out of university, have you ever used sine, cosine, or tangent? Probably not. And yet, we spent 4 or 5 years grinding away at it from grade 10 all the way through our second year of college, studying basic math, then advanced math, until our tongues were practically hanging out from exhaustion. So maybe it's time we start asking, why? Because often the people who truly change the course of society, the ones who redirect the flow of history, are the ones who go against the current. They challenge what everyone else just accepts. They don't go with the flow, they steer it, and maybe that's not rebellious. Maybe that's wisdom. Society might define happiness a certain way, but there are people who say that's not happiness at all, and we're quick to call them strange, weird, or backwards. But what if their backwards view is actually more right than ours? Because the kind of happiness most people chase, it's really not unique to humans. It's the same as what animals seek: eat, mate, find shelter, survive. That's not human happiness. That's instinct. And look at the world today, everyone's racing to get rich. Success is defined by how many bank accounts you have, how many people call you the wealthiest in Vietnam, or even the world. But maybe that's just another version of the same trap, another loop in the cage. So let's think about this for a second. 2,000 years ago, who was the richest person in the world? Can you name them? Probably not. Most people can't. But 2,000 years ago, someone appeared whose life changed the calendar we still use today. That person was Jesus Christ. Did he ever chase money? Number, not once. He never lived to accumulate wealth. And go back even further, about 2,600 years ago, another figure appeared. If we're talking about wealth, no one on earth today could compare. Because he didn't just own a company, he owned an entire kingdom. A whole nation under his rule. No business empire comes close to that. And yet, at the age of 29, he walked away from it all. Gave up the throne. Left the palace. We remember him today as Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. If he had stayed a king, would we even know his name now? Probably not. But because he went searching for something deeper, something greater than power or wealth, we remember him and revere him thousands of years later. These are people who sought the true meaning of life. And that kind of value can't be taught in school. It doesn't come from a degree or a training program. It comes from living, from questioning, from daring to let go of what the world says matters, and finding what actually does. The value of life, you have to find that yourself. No one else can hand it to you. But before you set off on that journey, are you allowed to study a map first? Absolutely. If you're in the Mekong Delta and want to get to Saigon, wouldn't you check Google Maps? Of course. Only a fool would ignore it and just wander blindly. In fact, not using a map when one is available, that's just plain reckless. Even 50 years ago, people had paper maps. They checked them before heading out. The same principle applies to life. And remember this, even the Buddha consulted the map. Before he became enlightened, he didn't just go off on his own from day one. He spent 6 years in the forest, but before that, he studied under 2 of the most renowned teachers in India. Each one he stayed with for a few months, learning all they had to offer. When he realized their teachings still didn't answer his deepest questions, only then did he set out alone. Not because he rejected teachers, but because he had already learned all they could give. That's when he became his own teacher. So there are only 2 kinds of people who don't need a teacher. The ones who've learned from the best, absorbed all the wisdom available, and are ready to find their own path. And the ones who are completely clueless, who refuses all guidance and just talks nonsense saying, "The teacher is inside me." Those folks? Well, they might be on a one-way trip to psychiatric hospital. So yeah, use the map. Learn from those who've gone before. But know that at some point you'll have to walk your own road. No one else can walk it for you. Exactly. Most of us are somewhere in the middle, not lost in madness, but also far from enlightenment. And that means we have to learn. A lot. The real question is, who do we learn from? What books do we read? Which methods do we follow? And most importantly, how do we apply all that? In other words, we need to study the map carefully before setting out. That's the only way to walk with purpose. Now let's look at a real story. Just a year ago, there was this man. He took his own life. Back when Obama was still president, this man sat down with him to share a meal buncha in Hanoi. That's how respected he was. You don't just casually have dinner with a world leader unless you've made a serious impact. He was one of the world's top chefs, cooked for heads of state. And in his later years, he traveled constantly soaking in beauty, exploring food cultures across the globe. He'd stay a month or two in each country, then write books. He published dozens of them, all sold internationally. Anyone interested in cuisine or travel probably read his work. He visited nearly 200 countries, basically the whole world. And yet, at the age of 61, he took his own life. That's when it hits you. Maybe seeing the whole world doesn't guarantee you'll find meaning. Maybe wandering, collecting experiences, even achieving worldly success, none of that protects you from emptiness. Look at celebrities, actors, models. They tour the world, perform everywhere, and success comes quickly. But still, many end their lives too soon. So we're left with this haunting realization. External achievement doesn't equal inner peace. It's not about how far you travel, but how deeply you understand why you're traveling at all. Let's step back and look at what this all means. The great thinkers and philosophers, the ones who truly changed the world, most of them only ever traveled to 2 or 3 countries in their entire lives. And not to sightsee, but to seek solitude, to study, to reflect. You rarely hear of these people ending their lives in despair. Same with legendary scientists. Einstein, Pasteur, Edison. They didn't hop around the globe. They moved only when necessary, when a better working environment called for it. Their goal wasn't to see more, it was to understand more. Meanwhile, the world changers are those rare individuals who shape the course of human thought and history. They often live quietly, go deep, not wide. The rest of us, we mostly follow the paths they've already carved. So, what do we learn from this? Here's something that might sound funny, but it holds true. When you have money one day, don't just send your kids off to travel endlessly. Too much wandering without depth can lead to disorientation and even despair. In Chan Kian Moat, Right View 1, the course that awakens a deeper sense of life's meaning, there's a powerful slide on the principle of deep learning. It outlines a clear method: observe, analyze, synthesize. It's not about how much you see, it's about how deeply you look. So consider this: who has more depth? Someone who travels to 200 countries and then understands the world, or someone who needs only 5? Who understands better, a student who needs 200 math problems to grasp a concept, or one who gets it after doing just 3 or 5? Depth is not about repetition, it's about insight. Those who can truly observe, analyze, and distill meaning realize quickly the world operates on repeating patterns. Whether a country is rich or poor, hot or cold, whether it has 4 seasons or 2, it's all just surface detail. Underneath, the essence of life remains the same. That's the heart of deep learning, and that's what gives life clarity. Those who learn deeply are the ones who can draw meaningful conclusions about life, and when they turn those insights inward, that's when they begin to understand themselves. Only by recognizing your own value can you begin to understand the value of life. So if you want to discover life's meaning, it starts here. See your own worth. Know yourself. Then you can begin to understand the world around you. And once those 2 pieces of self and life click into harmony, that's when a true sense of purpose and meaning emerges. But if you haven't yet developed the ability to understand yourself, if you haven't yet learned how to truly observe and understand the world, then no matter how many luxury villas you own, no matter how many countries you visited, it won't bring clarity, it won't give you peace. You could put a beloved pet dog on a plane, send it to 200 countries, and when it comes back, ask it, "What's the world like?" It wouldn't be able to answer. Why? Because travel alone doesn't equal insight. And that's why the old saying rings so true: 1,000 cows are still cows, but 1 human remains a human. The man we spoke of earlier, the one who traveled the world, wrote dozens of books, and inspired countless young people, still ended his life in despair. Why? Because he hadn't yet learned to understand himself. His heart, his mind, they were too focused outward. He lacked the ability to turn inward, and without that, no amount of external experience can fill the emptiness inside. True understanding begins within. Between understanding the world and understanding yourself, which one truly matters more? It's understanding yourself. Most of us get stuck trying to grasp the outside world, constantly reaching outward, while completely neglecting what's going on inside. We end up knowing a little about the external, but lose sight of the internal. And when the heart strays and we don't even realize it, how can we be happy? How can we find peace? That's why, even after visiting 200 countries, some still end their lives in despair. I have friends who are successful now in their 40s or 50s. Many of them have this goal. Each year I'll take my child to 2 countries. By the time they graduate university at 23, they'll have seen 30 or 40 countries. They call that giving their kids enough life experience. And honestly, I just laugh. Because I want to say, keep sending them out like that. And one day you'll be wondering why they're lost, maybe even why they chose to end it all. The real question isn't how many countries they've been to, but what did they learn? What insights did they gain about life, about themselves? Travel, just for sightseeing, taking photos, collecting superficial memories. What's the point? You could do that with Google. Type a place in, hit enter, it's all there. Travel, that only adds to your collection of knowledge, isn't transformative. What matters is what you actually internalize, what you reflect on. Even with food, try 100 dishes or just 5. If you understand the principles of taste, you'll realize they're not so different. The person who sees the pattern underneath can experience 5 things and grasp what others miss even after 100. So it's never about the quantity, it's about the depth. And the journey that truly matters. It begins inside. Why do we find something delicious? Why is it that when we go to India, we often can't enjoy the food, while over 1 billion people there eat it daily and absolutely love it? We find it overwhelming, even bring instant noodles along just to survive, and yet they nod with deep satisfaction at the very same dishes. Why? We only have about 100 million people in Vietnam. They have 1.4 billion, and they're convinced their food is amazing. So what's going on here? It all comes down to this. The core of taste is habit. That's it. If you can understand this truth, if you realize that taste isn't about some universal, delicious standard, but about what your body and mind have grown accustomed to, then you won't need to travel the world tasting hundreds of cuisines. You'll know the essence already. Take a child. Do they like onions? Chili? Usually not, but what do we do as adults? We push. Eat the onion, it's not a big deal, just a little chili. And eventually what happens? By the time they're 12, they're addicted to it. Can't enjoy a bowl of pho without onions. Say it's bland without chili in the fish sauce. It's not the ingredients, it's the habit. Same with alcohol. One person says, "This drink is amazing." Another woman who doesn't usually drink says, "It's so bitter." Why? Because one has had it 100 times and the other hasn't. The difference isn't in the wine, it's in the wiring. Even love, even marriage, follows the same principle. We grow attached to each other. We get hooked on each other's presence. But that's a habit too. Strip away the repetition and the feeling fades. You break the pattern and the addiction dissolves. So maybe the boldest advice is this. If you're caught in a loop, whether it's food, drink, or even a relationship, look at your habits. Recognize them, shift them. And just like that, the craving loses its grip. Then there's this young woman who owned a fashion company valued at $30 million. She sold luxury shoes and handbags. A single bag could cost $5,000. A pair of shoes, $2,000. She was running a fairly high-end brand on the global stage, and yet one day she took her own life. These people have more than enough money. They can afford the best doctors, the most renowned psychologists, but still they end their lives. Why? If you really observe, analyze, and reflect deeply, you'll realize something important. Psychology has its limits. It can only skim the surface of the human mind. It stays in the realm of emotions and behavior, but it can't penetrate into the spiritual layers, into the depths of consciousness. Psychology can soothe, guide, manage, but there are questions of the soul that it simply cannot answer. About 6 months ago, there was another tragic case. A young woman in South Korea. Her name is Suli, Choi Jin-ri, 1994-2019. Do you remember her? She was around 27 or 28 when she took her own life, but she had been famous since she was about 22. By the time she was 25 or 26, she started asking people a haunting question. What's the point of being famous? And no one could give her an answer. Fame, wealth, beauty, she had them all. But those things couldn't fill the deeper void inside her, because the real question she was asking wasn't about career or success. It was about meaning, about being. And when no one could answer, when even she couldn't find it herself, despair crept in. This is why deep self-understanding matters more than anything else. If we don't address the spiritual hunger inside us, if we only treat the surface, hoping success or therapy will be enough, we're missing the core. And that's when even a seemingly perfect life can become unbearable. So why couldn't anyone answer her question? Here was a young woman, famous, wildly successful, adored by thousands. Wherever she went, fans followed. She made tens of millions a year. Her face was everywhere on screens, in magazines, online. She had everything society tells us to chase. And yet, she asked, "What's the point of being famous?" And no one could give her an answer. Why? Because she was asking the wrong people. She never asked that question to someone who had truly found the meaning of life. She asked it in a world still chasing shadows. And those people, still caught up in the pursuit of fame themselves, could only offer shallow responses. Fame is for fame's sake. You're successful, why are you even asking? What's wrong with you? You should be happy. But she wasn't looking for admiration, she was looking for understanding. She needed someone who had already seen through the illusion, someone who had tasted something deeper. Because only those who've discovered life's real value can answer questions about meaning. And those voices, they weren't in her life. For those of you who've taken Chan Kian Mot, Right View 1, you'll recognize this truth. She didn't have the three treasures, the core elements that can protect and guide a soul searching for truth. A wise teacher, someone who's walked the path and can light the way. A library of essential wisdom, books that distill generations of clarity. A circle of true companions, friends who don't just echo the world, but challenge it with insight. She had none of that. Not in the places she looked. If she had even one of those, if she had access to just a handful of the right voices, the right words, the right hearts, that question would have found an answer. Fame, in the end, was just noise. What she needed was silence, reflection, a direction home. But in a world obsessed with outward shine, she was lost in the glitter, and no one told her where the light really lives. A good friend might not have all the answers, but they'll guide you to the right questions, the right books, the right mentors. They'll walk beside you to a door they can't open themselves and say, "Ask here." This is where truth lives, A bad friend, on the other hand? You ask something deep, something real, like, what's the point of being famous? And they'll brush it off with, are you crazy? Let's go shopping instead. What kind of weird question is that? That's not just a bad friend, that's an ignorant one. And ignorant friends often give foolish answers, not because they're mean, but because they simply don't know better. This brings us back to something that happened in Vietnam not too long ago. There was a man, Mr. Vu, Giang Le Nguyen Vu, who stirred up the whole internet by asking a simple but powerful question. What's the point of having a lot of money? Half the internet mocked him. That's such a dumb question. Everyone knows what money is for. The other half said, no, this is a deep question. Few people ever stop to ask it seriously. Giang Le Nguyen Vu is a Vietnamese entrepreneur and the founder of Trung Nguyen Group. He is often called the King of Coffee in Vietnam. And here's the truth. The people who rush to dismiss the question are the ones who've never really understood money. Because when we're lost, when we're wrong, when we're ignorant, we usually don't realize it. And instead of humbly admitting we don't know, we often pretend we do. We deflect, we laugh, we attack. But what Mr. Vu asked, like what singer Sully asked, is a question rooted in soul, not status. It's a question that exposes the hollowness of a life focused only on external success. These are people chasing success and forgetting happiness, reaching out but never looking within. And the truth is, all the things we're truly searching for, peace, clarity, meaning, they're not out there. They've always been inside, and until we turn inward, we'll keep running in circles. With fame, with money, with admiration, still asking, why doesn't any of this feel like enough?